when I go like this.
We're here today to discuss how you and your staff have prepared your students for ISTEP this year. And I need you to walk me through the process that goes on over there at TEST. What specifically have you encouraged your students to do to prepare for the test?
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah. ISTEP 2014. You know what it is. Let's get ready. Getting sleep. Wake up early. Take a shower. Brush your teeth. Smelling fresh. Eating breakfast. Walk to school. Ride the bus. Be on time. Got my pencil. Pet my cat. Be prepared. Read directions. Working hard. Bring your brain. Plain and writing. Rap it out. Paragraphing. Drink some OJ. Stay in focus. Filling pages. Write a lot.
We know you can do this!
Don't give up. Do some push-ups. Use big words. Solving problems. Reference sheet. Cube it out. Showing work. And checking work. Take your time. Using rest. Visualize. Do your best. Relax and breathe. Eat a snack. Bump it up. Just bump it up.
So, Mr. Welch, you've got quite a bit to prepare your students. Do you feel ready?
Yeah.
Seems like everybody in their test is working really hard. In fact, I would tell you what, they are really going to bump it up.
Yes, they
Really
will.
get things going
On the ball.
You told me that about 400 times.
On the ball.
Well, let's remember, and let's never forget, I'm the boss.
Dr. Borth, one more thing. Beating tennis.
They're looking at us.
Joy. That's right, the joy of learning.
Good evening and welcome to the March 12th, 2014 meeting of the Richmond Community Schools Board of School Trustees. Would you please stand for the pledge with me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First of all, we will have the
reading of our mission statement. Mrs. Heidel.
Richmond Community Schools mission: graduate students who are literate, responsible, proficient in state and national standards, and college and career ready.
Thank you, Susie. And now we will have the reading of the mission statement.
The
Kelly?
vision, our board vision is that by 2020, Richmond Community Schools will be the highest performing school system in East Central Indiana.
Sorry, that was our vision statement. I'm focused on a new seating arrangement, and so my words didn't come out quite right. Okay, tonight is a work session, and during our work session, many times we do not have public commentary at the beginning, but I am going to include public commentary at the beginning of our meeting this evening. And so I would like to remind us all, when there is public commentary, the maximum amount of time for individual speakers is 5 minutes per person. And the board expects personal decorum and factual information from the speaker. Comments recognizing the work of staff and students are always welcome. However, critical remarks concerning specific school personnel or students are to be made through the complaint process, which is available in our policy 9130. So with that, do we have anyone signed up for public commentary?
Paulette, do we have anybody?
I do right here.
We do. We have one person signed up.
Other way, Mr. Egan. I think, okay.
This will be fine. I really don't need a mic anyway.
Mr. Egan,
Yes.
would you like stand in front of the podium so
All
that?
right.
Thank you. And then if you would please state your name.
Yes, Ms. Morgeson, I'm John Egan, and thank you again so as to revisit this community-wide concern, more so now than my January 2011 previous take issue with the board. You know, I think individually, everyone would like to walk on the path of least resistance, but as a collective body, you don't have that luxury. To some of you here, familiar to or acquainted not, at the table or in the gallery, my issue concerning my son's victimization may be dimmed for recall or maligned to a higher level of denial. However, here we all are again. Given that I'm allowed 5 minutes, I estimate it might take me 8 or 9 more visits to get my 15 minutes of say-so. In and on the record for February 11th, 2011, a letter attached with signatures of Messrs. Barf, Cross, and Miss Stewart, it had been confirmed that a one Anthony Sonsini, a former student here and recent hired help to the faculty, is the same individual subject of my inquiry. I may add, by way of explanation, for the past 15 years, during the events mentioned, I traveled back and forth to our residence here in Richmond, and on one visit became aware of Mr. Sonsini's position
Mr.
here on
Egan.
the faculty.
I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yes.
but we cannot allow you to name specific personnel. We do have a policy that where you may voice a formal complaint by following the policy, but we cannot allow you to name specific individuals of our school
The
corporation.
way I read it, and not to dispute that, but the way I read your policy, it was not to in any way state other than factual and certainly not in a maligning way. And I have not done that yet.
I'm
just
going to
named the
ask
facts.
Mr. Cross to,
I think, Mr. Egan, there are two possible avenues you can take here. If you have a complaint against the process by which any individual was hired, then address the process, and I'm sure we can deal with that in a general
Very well.
manner. If you're going to complain about the results of that process and the hire of a particular individual, then that does in fact rise to the complaint level. I have a copy of it here for you. You're free to take it with you.
Very well. However, I have registered, as I said, in 2011, and I'm wondering, as an update, what has been done since then, but we'll move on. The next step was to address and confront the board regarding same, and I've diligently pursued this matter of investigation wherever it leads. What I wave in my outstretched arm is a matter of public record, a folder of the various public agencies' records of the events. And the paper trail cannot be ignored and or covered up. So now I come to effect change, attendant with or without a sense of urgency, for time to stand still that we may contemplate the obvious, and then having done so, the obvious will soon be discovered. And the first note of discovery is that the board's previous response until now, at best, can be reasoned as plausible deniability, and at worst, tempered obfuscation, along with a healthy dose of off-point summaries. Tell me, or better explain to the parents and the children, what has transpired in the last 3 years that can counter my assertions. Anyone care to step up to the dais? In closing, I find it interesting that not word one has been spoken by the individual that I will not rename by way of his participation in this criminal behavior, or even an apology to us. Additionally, the board, through its non-action, may preemptively have gone to siesta and hold that mañana will shine brighter. Does this affect the obvious need to revise the board's position? I wonder. Does anyone care to take a look at the folder? The public record, as I've gathered it, and as you all seem to be either unaware, not privy to. And thank you so much.
thank you, Mr. Egan.
I would expect some kind of response, formal or informal.
Thank you, Mr. Egan.
You're welcome.
And now we are ready to proceed with celebrating the joy of learning.
Tonight we have representatives from West End Bank. Mr. Frame and Mrs. Haskett here making a presentation, and I'll just turn the podium over to them.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Tim Frame, and with me is Susan Haskett, our Vice President of Marketing. On behalf of the bank, I would like to express our appreciation to the RCS School Board and administration for allowing this unique partnership to continue since 2006. The We Are Savers program, which began at the Garrison Elementary School, now reaches each elementary school, providing literacy sessions to the fourth graders throughout the year. In addition, the high school and the elementary school each have a student-operated branch, providing the student tellers with valuable life experiences and access for all the students to financial services. Again, this year, we are pleased to have the opportunity to give back 1% of the account balances in support of student activities. And this year we have selected the Richmond Music Boosters to receive a check in the amount of $3,000. So I'd like to present the check at this time.
We're gonna-
There, sir. Are you receiving the check?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I could just take a moment, want to thank the Richmond School Board for having us here. I want to thank West End Bank for this very generous donation. We have been an organization for right on 50 years next year. And this is something that we love to do. We love the kids. We want to continue, doing these things, and this just helps that. Our orchestra is about 114, 115 years old. So there's many things that keep us going, that keep us wanting to do what we do. So I just wanted to say thank you, and thank you, West End Bank, for what you do, and we'll put this to good use. Thank you.
Very much.
Can we take a brief moment to just get a picture with all of them?
Absolutely.
Okay. Ms. Morganson, would you come up here and get a photo too? Right here.
There's a dry erase marker on here, so just watch where your hands go, because it'll. Someone want to hold that in the middle? Okay. All right. Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Dr. Borf, members of the board. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity for this tonight with the community, the music department, the arts. We just can't say enough in terms of the amount of support and encouragement that our kids receive every single year. These kinds of opportunities do help to keep our activities going. It gets a little bit tricky. We have to be very creative, but the community stands up right behind us time and time again, and to help out our booster club like this means the world to them, because our parents, I'll tell you what, they are right there with us every step of the way, kind of setting back while the kids do the marching and the playing and things, but 110% pushing them. So thanks again for letting us do this tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Either of you want to make a comment?
Ditto to everything he said. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for lots of joys of learning.
I'd also like to call special attention to West End Bank and the partnership that we have with them. It was mentioned 2006, this program began, and it's now expanded to almost all the buildings. And this is going to be a feature of the Urban School Summer Conference. This program will now be featured in the Urban School Summer Conference, which means that we will be conducting a session on the effects of this program. The program was put into place to talk about personal financial literacy, and it's now expanded into the high school, and there are many school districts around the state that are interested in what we're doing here. And so this is just the beginning. I'd like to hope that maybe at some point we even do a National School Boards Association session on this very same topic. We'll see how it goes. We'll do it step by step. We were asked early on to be doing something to promote this program. We wanted to see some results. We've seen some results, and we're seeing some of those results yet this evening. Providing some much-needed support to the music program is only one way, but they have a history. West End Bank has a history of coming back and supporting academic competition as well. So thanks to West End Bank and the partnership that will be gaining some statewide attention through some of our conference sessions. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And now we are ready for action items.
First action item tonight is to do a second reading and adoption of Policy Section 4000. For board members, for all board members, I want you to be aware that Policy Section 4000 was first brought for a reading back in December. It should have been, because it was approved for first reading and moving to a second, should have been brought back in January. We brought the 6,000s in for first reading and simply didn't think about bringing 4,000s in for the second reading. So this is the second reading. This was done by a committee involving Pat Heine, Kelly Baumgardner, I think Elisa Stewart, and I, and we also had an REA invitation out there. So I bring it to you. I would recommend second reading and adoption of Policy Section 4000.
Okay, I need a motion, please.
So,
Motion made by Aaron Stevens, seconded by Suzanne Darrenagowski.
Are you, your head's going back and
I know.
forth. It's hard to get used to.
Comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you. Next item is a bylaw change. This is for board compensation, section, or bylaw 0144.1. This would be first reading. This is nothing new. By resolution, you had changed the way the board is to be compensated. What we're doing is putting it into the bylaw now and formalizing this. There is a change, though, from what it's been in the past, and that has to do with merit pay for the board. Should there be some goal attainment, it's always been written in there that there could be some stipends made available to the board members themselves. It was the thought of some of the board members that I've been talking to that this still would be an option, but any stipend would then go to directly support the teacher mini-grant fund. So if the board realizes its goals and it would generate some stipends, those stipends would go right to the line building that teacher mini-grant. So that's the only change. I would recommend first reading and moving it to the second.
Okay, motion made by Jess Leifer, seconded by Susie Hively. Comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
For our next item, the capital assets inventory appraisal, I turn to Karen Scalf, who is with us for the first time in place of in the place of our financial director.
Okay, Richmond Community Schools would like to obtain an updated capital assets inventory appraisal. It has been almost 10 years since the last physical inventory was done, and that was in 2005 with a company named Tau. And I propose that we use a new company, AdTech Inc., out of Centerville. They're a local company. To perform a new updated inventory that will also provide us with compliant documents for State Board of Accounts. So it's my recommendation that the Board of School Trustees approve the recommendation to use AdTech Inc. of Centerville, Indiana to provide services for the RCS Capital Assets Inventory Appraisal as presented.
Okay, I need a motion. Motion made by Dixie Robinson, seconded by Aaron Stevens. Comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
For our next item involving the common wage, I think you remember we talked about needing board approval to conduct a common wage hearing. That has been done. We turn to Mrs. Scalf again for presentation of that common wage for approval. And by the way, Mr. Mays is here if there are any questions on the details of that common wage scale.
Attached in the agenda, you will see that the information that was adopted by the Common Wage Committee at the March 6, 2014 hearing regarding the minimum wage that must be paid on upcoming projects as presented.
And we would need approval of that.
Okay, motion made by Kelly Baumgartner, seconded by Jeff Slifer. Comments or questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Thank you. Our consent items tonight involve approval of minutes, our last meeting, recommendation by Human Resources, which includes an addendum as posted to the web. Also, approval of summer school, a BPA state corporate sponsored field trip, also BPA Nationals corporate sponsored field trip, Skills USA corporate sponsored field trip, and a HOSA corporate sponsored field trip. Those items I would recommend for approval tonight under consent.
Okay, I need a motion. Motion made by Dixie Robinson, seconded by Susie Hively. Comments or questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now we're ready for our work session.
The work session tonight is focused on the strategic plan. What we would like to do, the administration, is work with the board tonight, discuss with the board tonight some questions that we have on details of the strategic plan. We have some questions, some thoughts, concerns, what have you, on components of the plan. You may also have some, and my thought is we simply progress through those as the plan goes. And whoever has the first question, just jump in there. We will have different members of the administration address different questions. And so let's just start at the very beginning. Target 1.1, ensure that 90% of RCS students K-12 are reading at or above grade level by 2020. Dr. Parker, you made a comment. This is your comment.
I did.
It's an important metric.
A part of what I did was seek some input from the principals before reviewing this, and then I also have some meetings set up with teachers. But in all of our work that we've done in all of our buildings, reading is an important metric. We need to know where our kids are. And so we feel like this is one that we need to continue to track and monitor. We would hate to see this one taken out.
Well, one of the questions I have is that it seems as though the action steps all focus on K through 8.
Mm-hmm.
And the target is for students K through 12. So do we not need, are all of our students at grade level by the time they reach 9th grade?
I would like to say yes, but I won't. We do have a lot of things going at the high school. I was just looking to think if maybe those got put back with the graduation plan, maybe they belong here. But we have lots of action steps that we're implementing at the high school. We've added one section of Read 180. We've reconfigured the way we do Read 180, and so the students who were not benefiting from that were put into a more targeted intervention class, opening up more seats for Read 180. And so, you know, just implementing the scholastic reading inventory at the high school was a huge shift. Just to even get the data was a huge shift. And so they're building interventions to meet the needs of these kids. The Accuplacer is a new assessment that the state is requiring us to do. That's going to give us more data because there's a reading component in that. So any junior who has not passed the ECA for English or math 2 times, or who did not earn a score of 46 on the reading or math portion of the PSAT in their 10th grade year, will have to take the Accuplacer diagnostic assessment. If they don't score within the benchmark range on that assessment, then we are required to provide intervention. And we are currently looking at different options for intervention. One option would be the My Foundations Lab, which is connected to Accuplacer, which is an online individualized program for meeting the needs of students in basic reading or basic math. So there is more to come.
Which goes to some of our questions later on, and that is some of these goals and strategies cross years. Right now, the high school assessment package is changing, almost changing as we speak. And it will get to some of our K-12 focus. The idea was that reading doesn't stop at grade 8. We had talked about that earlier. But as we're looking at the assessment package at the high school, it is changing, and we'll be collecting even more information. But the Accuplacer, does the Accuplacer go in yet this year?
We'll be doing it in March,
Yeah.
at the end of this month.
Okay, so, and everybody else jump in here. So then that leads me to a concern that I have. And it's a general overall concern that, and maybe I need someone to explain to me specifically what a strategic plan, what goals and strategic plan is. But when I think of it, I think it is a way to organize ourselves so that we are dealing with right now, the current, and we're also planning for the future.
Mm-hmm.
And my concern is that it's all about assessment and data. And I don't think that that is everything that defines us as a school corporation. And so it just seems to me that, okay, assessment is a piece, but what we do with that assessment and what strategies we put in place for interventions or for best practices or for early childhood or whatever is, we need a lot more of that tells what we're doing to get where we want to go. I don't know if I said that exactly the way I wanted to, but it seems like everything is focused around assessment. And it seems as though to me that we're a lot more than that. I mean, when we think about everything that we are doing, it's more than just assessment. So
I think a part of that is our response to this plan. We looked at the targets and said, what are we going to do to make sure we can measure that target? Underneath any given one of these blue areas or yellow areas, there are probably 30 or 40 curricular things we could write here. I mean, there are things going on in every single building, and when you look at the school plans, you see that probably a little more clearly. But for instance, in the reading, in terms of what are we doing to ensure that our kids are getting the reading skills, I could start writing now, not finish till tomorrow, on what's going on in the buildings to address reading in particular.
The goals themselves, if you recall, were designed to be measurable. So they are heavy on the metrics and the measurement, no doubt about that. But it is much more than the action plan suggests. The other piece that we should have mentioned was that the school action plans are all tailored to this. They're linked into this. It would almost look like this. So on the building level, you can see what they're doing to achieve what the board goals are too. And it is a lot more than just assessment, but that's how we're measured at the end of the day. So that's what you are seeing as a board member.
And if,
well, I think that's one part of it, but I think that, well, that's just, and maybe maybe I've rethought our goals, and maybe we need to.
Well, when I put into, was it 2 board meetings ago that we were out front, I think it kind of hit all of us when a comment was made that they were trying to develop standard or measurements to a board goal as it was an additional duty, not really something to benefit our students achieving. So I kind of understand what Linda's saying in a way, because I understand the assessment piece of it, but we shouldn't, I think it's difficult for us to drive what assessment to use, because we shouldn't do that. We should be working off the assessments that the teachers and the building principals need to be, we don't want to add work to them.
Well, I don't think there was ever any intention to say that we're doing this at the direction, we're giving this test at the direction of the board. It's just that there was a goal there, and we have to measure that somehow. This is the measure that we've chosen to use. So that's one of the conversations that Dr. Parker's having with principals and teachers. Is this helpful for you? So far, I will tell you, the principals have urged us not to discontinue this. We've come this far, and they've urged us not to discontinue that. Whether we have that same conversation with the teachers remains to be seen, because that hasn't been conducted yet.
To look back at the plan, I don't want to lose sight of what's in the yellow, because the yellow is that piece that I think you're missing, that you're saying, where is that? I mean, the strategy to refine implementation of the Indiana K-6 reading framework, and if you remember that, what that framework is for K-6, K-6 and then 6 to 12, if you look at that, it's a huge document that includes Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, interventions, an SBRR approach. It defines the curricular strategies that we use, and so we are every day continuing to implement that and all the components of both of those at the elementary, the intermediates, and the high school.
We're still heavy on assessment, though, and
No doubt about that.
I'm just giving my honest opinion here. And Susie?
I think we fall a little bit into the trap when we talk about things like this of looking at assessment, because that's where the data is that helps us know if people are progressing in the ways that we had hoped for, wanted them to do. And it's such a huge topic, but I think, at least for myself, I'm curious about how some of those curricular pieces are implemented and which ones the principals and teachers feel are most meaningful, and getting to know a little bit more down to the nitty-gritty kinds of what's happening on a daily basis. The assessment information is very useful. It gives us the data and an overall picture, but that's sort of like the airline picture. I'd like to sort of see the road picture down a little closer and have some better understanding of the things that people feel are really working and meaningful with kids, and maybe if there are areas that can be identified where maybe one particular thing isn't as useful as we had hoped, or we haven't figured out how to make that work as well for us as maybe we've heard it worked someplace else. I'd like to hear a little bit about those kinds of discussions, because I feel like that's where the development of new ideas and comes from in terms of strengthening our curriculum.
And I'll be able to answer those questions at the end of May, because I've got the meeting scheduled mostly during April and some in early May with, I'm going to meet by grade level with grade level teachers. It's voluntary. They don't have to come, but I suspect they will come. And those are the exact questions that I've kind of prepared for them is, what is useful for you? Because we know that we need, I don't know that we need, what's one of the questions? Do we need a benchmark assessment? And that was one that I posed to the principals. Do we want something that tells us 2-3 times a year sort of that balcony view. How are we doing in reading? How are we doing in math? Are we moving in the direction we want to move? And so those would be the benchmark measures. And resoundingly, the principal said, absolutely, yes, we need that. And I don't know what the teachers will say. And then we have the formative assessment, which is the standards-based. This is what I think I'm going to teach. This is where my kids are now, and this is where they are after I have taught it. And do I need to reteach anything? And so we use Acuity right now for that. And the question is Acuity meeting our needs? What are the barriers to making it useful in what you do? And I have some ideas about what might be the barriers there, but we'll just wait and see what the teachers say. But I will tell you this, at the last meeting when we talked about assessment and how much assessment there was, and I said, and these are the things I can take off the plate for the end of the year. Put that out to the principals who put it out to their teachers. The Indiana Department of Education even said you can opt out of Acuity 4, Diagnostic 4 if you want to. What I'm getting back from the teachers is no, we want that data. We want to know where our kids are. And so when I talk about pulling things off the table and the teachers say no, it's giving me a little bit of information, so.
Mm-hmm. Dixie?
Well, when I was looking at this, I looked back and it says 2013 to 2014. I don't think you can do a strategic plan of any kind, any justice in 1 year. I think we should be thinking a little bit longer term, 3 years possibly. I think 5 years is too long because too many things change in the process, but more of a 3-year plan. Also, the strategic plan basically showcases what we feel is important for our kids in our school system, and I do think it's a little heavy on the testing when there's so many other things our kids are doing extremely well and that we're very proud of, and there's no inclusion of any of that in here. And when I see terms like ongoing or in process, it really doesn't tell me anything. I would like to see evidence or anecdotal whatever, so that we know what's actually taking place to get there.
Suzanne?
When we talk about it being heavy on the testing, I don't disagree. But remember, when we created these things, we said they need to be measurable, they need to be measurable. And so when we said that, the tools for measuring a lot of these are tests. And so I don't think we were intentionally being heavy on the testing. It's just that when we said they needed to be measured, we went naturally to the measurements that we have. So I just, if we mean that, and I think we're going through and deciding whether or not there are some things we can give up, and I think that's the right thing to do. But you're right, Dixie. It's the stuff we say is important. And then when we arrived at the things we said were important, we said, but we have to be able to measure them.
Well, I'm not sure that, I know it was written, but I'm not sure we all necessarily thought that.
That it needed to be measured?
That I think that there are other ways, there are multiple ways of measuring something.
Okay, well, I mean, that's fine, but I know we had the conversation about them needing to be measured.
And I think assessment should be embedded throughout our strategic plan.
And I don't disagree.
But I'm not sure, I just don't feel that it should define who we are. And as I read through this plan, it's what you do with that assessment. It's not just taking the test. It's what you do with it after you get the results. And so, you know, I don't know. I just feel like that there are lots of ways to measure other than by giving children a test. And I think we have heard this loud and clear. I know we have to comply with the state, and I know that. I think we've heard many of our parents say loud and clear that they want more than their child to be tested. And so as I read through this, I was just keeping all those things in mind. And, but as I read through it, it was one assessment after another, and we're going to develop an assessment. I want to know, I want more. I want to know what we're going to do after we test them. And I want to educate the whole child. I want, a couple of years ago, we closed schools and to generate money so that we could take care of the social and emotional well-being of our students. And so I would like to see that kind of effort also put into who we are.
But it's there. We are doing that.
I
But
know
these
we're
are the
doing
things
it.
These are the things I'm not disagreeing with you necessarily. I guess I'm just trying to
But
figure out
when
why
we're talking about a
reworking it.
5-year plan or a 3-year plan or whatever, we need to continue with plans for those kinds of programs.
I agree with you, but when we say we want to ensure that 90% of the students master state and national standards by 2020, that requires an assessment to measure that, right?
Well, I think you're right, but I also think there are goals that you have to have in place to help kids achieve the testing goals. So, and there's some in the back, there's-
Strategies.
Yeah, but those need to be in place as well. I guess what I'm saying is there needs to be a better balance. We need those goals to ensure that our kids do achieve the academic or the testing goals. And that's social, the discipline, things like that we have. And there's so many things that we have done so well. I mean, they're in place, they're moving, we're making progress, and it's not noted.
Well, some of that is at a lower level than this plan. I'm thinking, how would you know that teachers are responding to the test? You'll know that if you look at the building level plans and how the principals are working with the teachers. It could be an RTI. I mean, that's one very individualized approach to the students who need the interventions. Or it might be their PBS plan, PBIS plan, which you wouldn't find in here. I'm not even so sure you would find that in their specific school improvement plan. It's a separate plan that talks about behavior and the leadership values. We started updating all those to show you have values that kind of balance your strategic goals. What do those values look like in daily practice? And if you recall, we had so many of those that we stopped doing that, and we've pretty much taken on the Joy of Learning celebrations during the board meetings. What we might want to do is, every time there's a Joy of Learning presentation, point that to one of the values that you have.
Values.
We haven't been doing that, which was designed to show the balance that we're trying to achieve between assessment and then just the whole child. Maybe
Well, and I think
doing that.
perhaps how we built this led us down that road, because Steve Benjamin helped us work through this, and he presented it as a scorecard. And scorecards have numbers, and scorecards have data, and
Absolutely.
these are our data points that we're looking for. And so, and I absolutely agree with Linda Morgeson that it's not about the number. It's about what we do in response to that number. And we've set targets. We know by 2020 where we need to be, and so we've set those trajectories that say, by the end of 2014, we need to hit this target to be on track to be where we want to be by 2020. If we're not on trajectory to hit that target, then that has to signal a response from this body of people to say, what are we going to do to ensure that we get to where we need to be? And so that maybe is what you need to see.
Well, I think one of the, and kind of follow up a little bit on what Susie said, I honestly have had, for the last couple of years, kind of a tough time following our strategic plan, because I think, and I don't mean this to sound probably as negative as it's going to sound, but, you know, we as a board get together and we work hot and heavy for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and we develop a plan, and then it's pushed out, and then until, you know, like when we push this out, modified, we're really not revisiting now until, what, I'm going to say 6 months later. So sometimes I think it's difficult for me to follow this sometimes. But when I look at this, because it's not something that we talk about every board meeting, or it's not in every one of our discussions, because we push this out and you know, we hear that it's going to come back to us with the strategies and the metrics and the stuff that we need to tweak the plan or make it better. So, you know, we get the plan back and there's quite a few questions, and so my first thought is, well, we should have had this conversation 6 months ago. But not that, it's just that I'm not used to the process like you educators are. So, but then when Susie talks about the steps, we could look at the test, and I agree, we gotta have, if we're gonna measure the goal, we got, you know, we're gonna go to the data, we're gonna look at the test. And I see, you know, we got a 57% number, we got a 61% number, and we can see that that number's improving. But should we, as a board, how do we know this first action step, provide training on using curriculum maps to guide instruction of grade level standards? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm the vice president of the board. What's that mean?
Well, here's, and you know what my response to you would be, is that the action steps were put there to guide us. They were our steps.
But how do I know that that's been done effectively?
Why do you need to know that?
Well,
why do you need to know that?
Well, but how do I, if I'm going to look at 57% to 61%, how do I know that that is going in the right direction to I don't know. That's why I'm asking the question.
I would tell you it's going in the right direction. It's just not going fast enough.
Well, and that's one of the things that I had written down. Within this document, I think it would be very helpful, because we started this strategic plan last year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a year of data, baseline data or data, whatever. We have the data from last year. So I guess what I would like to see is a chart placed in this document so that we can readily view the...
It's in red. If you look at the target 1.1, 2012-13 end of year was 70.9%. And looking at our trajectory, where we need to be by the end of this year is 73.6.
But I want it to be more than this year, because a strategic plan goes for, well, this strategic plan, I think we laid out to be till 2020. So I want to see where we are and where we're going, and the targets that we need to hit in order to get there by 2020. And
well, I last year when we set 2020, I said, here's where we started and here's 2020, and we built a trajectory and said, so this is where we need to be by the end of this year. But then we actually exceeded that, and so we reconfigured the trajectories to say it's a little bit different trajectory.
And I know that you have done that. I would like to see it in this document, so that I can, when we are talking about this document, I can have that data readily available to know where we are and where we're going. That's what I'm saying, for each year until we hit 2020. If this strategic plan is going to carry us to 2020.
So, just so I'm clear, would just having that chart of the trajectories help, or do you need each individual goal graphed out?
Well, I think it would help on the, ensure that 90% of RCS students, K-12, it would be good to know where we are for that particular target.
Well, we're at 61 and we need to be at 73.6 by the end of the year to be at 2020 by 2014, or 2020.
Okay, so we don't have anything in between now and 2020?
No.
It's-
So it says
Sure.
right there.
No,
72.
right here, 2013-14 goal. You see where I'm, oh, it's
In red.
white in yours.
Yeah.
Right, it's right here.
So basically, if you put 73.6 on the graph and 90% on the graph from 2014 to 2020, that's your trajectory. That's where we're gonna have to hit. Now, at the end of the year, we're not at 73.6. If we're below that, the trajectory's gonna get steeper. If we're above that, it's gonna be a little less steep. The amount that we have to grow each year is going to be less because we're shooting for 2020 to have 90%.
I think that sounds like an awesome tool and a visual that would be very beneficial, and I would want to see it for, I know it's more work, but I would like to see it for each of the goals, only because the other thing I think about with this is that, well, and I have my fingers crossed and my toes and my knees and everything else, because I'm hoping that we'll get to some of these things before 2020, and it'll give us the time and the energy and the resources that we need to put them in the places where we haven't quite gotten there yet. And so getting to see how things are in the specifics would be very valuable, and it would be a way for us to think about resource allocation and things like that as well.
Well, and, it's funny that you would say that, because I can assure you that while the board set the goal 2020, the schools are shooting for 2014. Every year, they're shooting for 90%. They're never shooting for less
Oh,
than that.
I'm
So
sure of that.
we're-
They each need to be shooting for that every year in order for us as a system to get there. That's true.
Okay. At this rate, we should be out of here by about midnight.
And if I remember right, it was his suggestion too, wasn't it?
Okay.
Well, and on the second page, it's a reiteration of the first question. There are no metrics for 9-12 yet, but they're being built.
Well, we have the ECA for algebra and the ECA for English, but beyond that, we
Not really for
don't
reading, though.
really measure
Yeah.
state standard attainment at the high school level.
And it's a weakness of the system, I think, too. But they're dealing with that. On down here, though, we deal with the beginning of our technology piece. And students demonstrating age-appropriate proficiency in the use of personal technology. The cabinet talked about this at some length, and there are national standards per grade level. There were in the Common Core some grade level standards. The Common Core is not what we're looking at right now, and those have those been taken out per academic
Right, we
discipline?
can't find them right now for the Indiana Common Core, or whatever you want to call that,
So we are talking about inserting some national standards for the grade level specific, so that we have something to target ourselves to. I think it's only fair that we talk to the board about that and let you know that's one of the issues. Mr. Tidrow, you want to expound
Well,
on that?
The standards that we found are from a group called ISTE, and they are this international standards, International Society for Technology standards, and underneath that is the national technology standards called the NETS. So a lot of school corporations around Indiana have been adopting those and looking at those to embed those in their curriculum. The key there is not to make it a technology add-on. It's really to force or have the students look at technology as a tool or an addition to enhancing their learning process. You know, we don't want to use a word processor necessarily just to take notes for a class. We may want to use a word processor to create the notes and then share and collaborate with other members in their class. You may want to use a Web 2.0 type of interface to take notes. That way we can share things in a group as we're doing it. So these standards are based around those types of activities as opposed to maybe what we traditionally thought of technology 10, 15, 20 years ago. But with that said, they still don't go down to what we would see, kind of like what we see with our Indiana standards, you know, 1.1 and so forth. They're in larger groups. Creativity and innovation, for example, is one of the big six, as they call it, where the students maybe demonstrate, I'm going to read here, demonstrate creative thinking, construct knowledge, develop innovative products and processes using technology. Now, we know that happens already in Richmond schools. If you go to our webpage, you can see an example of what students can put together using CAD-based software in Mr. Knapp's class, for example. They're taking an idea, they're creating innovative thoughts, and they're creating a product at the end of that. Where, for the football field entrance gates, for example, they're doing all that using a technology, but the technology, they're not learning the technology as they go along. They're using it to build creative items or pieces. So that's what we want to embed into our instruction and curriculum.
But here's the bottom line, though, to this strategic plan. It says ensure that 90% of our students demonstrate age-appropriate proficiency in the use of personal technology. We are just now determining what those standards look like.
Right.
We don't have a measurement yet as to whether 90% of our students are demonstrating that on a regular basis. That requires another type of assessment, and we aren't ready for that yet.
Right. You are so right.
Especially when you're talking about your primary grades. Maybe when you get to that high school where they are using STEM-based things, project-based learning, you have that technology infused in the curriculum. And part of, say, Mrs. Selm's class is learning that technology and those key ideas and concepts. Then they can actually evaluate that. Maybe at your lower grades, maybe keyboarding if we introduce that, but it is different.
And that's some of the conversations that we have had, is that if you look at the standards, they're not the standards that the mind of 10 or 15 years ago wants to have. I would like them to say in third grade, students should be able to put their hands on the keyboard, on the home keys, and type a sentence. They're really more process standards that you see on how students will use technology to support thinking and creativity and collaboration. And at no point do they say how kids are going to learn how to actually use the equipment. And so those are things that we're going to have to work through as a system to say, you know, do we have an expectation for what a third grader can do on a computer? Not just how they can use it to enhance their learning, but they're going to have to learn how to, you know, type and use the programs.
Well, there almost seems like there's two levels here, though. I mean, you have to be familiar enough with the device and know how to use it to get to what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
So, Rob, the standards that you're talking about, are they standalone standards? Or, and I guess, will they meet the needs of our students? And are they integrated standards into our language arts and into our mathematics? You know, I guess we can use standards that are already there, but is that really what we need, or do we need to tweak them and utilize the knowledge of our teachers to help tweak them to ensure that we're putting into place what will work?
Yes. I think when you have a situation, I'm going to use an example. Mrs. Phillips down over at Fairview, she's got a set of iPads in her classroom for the last year, and she will find a standard and then infuse the technology into that, and then she can wrap her lesson around that. But the end result is maybe a different standard. So it will require, I think, our teachers. I think teachers around the state are looking at this as well. Massachusetts and Michigan have detailed standards, but Massachusetts has had a one-to-one for the last 8 years, maybe at a statewide level, and so they've developed some of those more specific standards. We haven't looked at those in depth, but I do think it's going to take. We're going to have to take these and then work with the individual levels. And
Well, and Jeff mentioned that it's 2 levels, but it's really 3 levels, because our teachers have to have training. I mean, you mentioned Mrs. Phillips, but Mrs. Phillips is very proficient.
And she is, right.
And many of our teachers are not, haven't gotten proficient yet.
Right.
Not that they can't, but, you know. Susie?
I just wanted to go back to this whole assessment of how do we tell how we're doing. And this seems to me to be a really good example of something that instead of having a assessment, we would have some sort of a skills checklist that would be both teacher observation as well as student observation. Students can know, oh, how am I feeling I'm doing on that? Do I really have this down, or just almost, or not quite yet? You know, I just really feel like when we have those kinds of tools in place, the kids own what they're doing because they see where they need to go, and that's so powerful. And so I think that the technology has an opportunity to help us find other ways of measuring what we're doing.
Right. And we're seeing that going on. Some of your observations, I think, from the principal level, as they walk around a teacher's room, are they using the available technology, whether it's a smart board or the iPads for instruction and so forth? So, but to go back to what Mr. Slifer mentioned, I think one of the key things that we see with these tools is that they are consumer-based as well. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. The iPads, the laptops, you see a lot of people using these devices at home or away from the job in a more entertaining and personal way, whether it's communicating Facebook or Twitter or just reviewing things. So they're getting training without even thinking about it in a lot of cases. So that helps where we don't have to go and say, here's how you use email. We've kind of gone past that. Maybe 10 years ago that was a full day's lesson. Now maybe it's, here's how to use our email, here's how to log in, here's a few things that you can do with it. But now let's go to the second level of using technology, using your iPad in your classroom perhaps to do your grades or your attendance while you're kind of monitoring the students. So, but it does involve learning that hardware, software, as well as embedding it.
So would you consider a skills checklist? Because here I see again, create an assessment instrument and deploy to students. So would you consider a skills checklist?
Well,
type of assessment?
And as I look out into the audience, I see Kelly McDermott in there. And I'm thinking, okay, we're going to hold the students in her classroom responsible for, at a 90% rate, being proficient in technology. How will she easily assess that at the middle school? We have Corey Irwin over here at the high school, and the same standard applies to him. Would that be a checklist? Are they going to recognize in a checklist manner how that's done? I think we need to talk to our teachers to find out a little more about how to answer this question. Before I answer that, I'd like to hear from them, and specifically about the technology piece, but there are others that need to be factored in. Because it's not going to happen in just one classroom. It needs to go through the entire system.
Well, so let me ask this question then. Is this an appropriate expectation?
I don't think so. Not yet. Not yet. But as we're moving towards a digital conversion, and remember, we're not there. We have barely started on that in many ways. This piece is probably the goal, the end goal of a digital conversion. And we just haven't achieved that.
Well, then that brings me to another question. And this is part of where I'm confused about the strategic plan being an ongoing document that takes us to 2020. Because, and if the action steps you say are just basically for the administration to be guided and to utilize, but the strategies are a very important part of reaching that goal.
Right.
Correct?
That's true.
So it looks like, to me, there's only one strategy under this part where students demonstrate proficiency, and the only strategy is to convene a study group to identify 21st century technology skills. And so that's all that needs to be.
It might be all that needs to be done for this current year.
Okay, so that's where I'm kind of confused, because it seems like there needs to be more strategies to take us on into the future.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, there should be.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
That's what the plan's for.
I wanted to ask too, we talked, when we had our pathways conversations, you know, at the end of grade 4, at the end of grade 8, at the end of grade 12, what do we want our kids to know and be able to do? And we were going to have these conversations with our teachers. And it should include technology, it should include Indiana academic standards, whatever they are going to be.
Where they may be.
And
Common
college
Core,
career
sort of.
readiness. So how do we get all that together and wrap it around this?
It's a tall order.
Yeah,
And
but
and how
but
do
it's
you-
gotta
And how do you
all
measure
fit.
that? It almost is a series of inputs at this point rather than outcomes.
Well, and when we go to something like technology, there's a whole technology plan that has all kinds of strategies in it. It's not all in this, but, I mean, each of these can be broken down into a million different parts with a million different strategies. I'm not sure that we're maybe wanting this to do more than what it can handle. I don't know, or, you know, we're expecting too much out of this, because each piece does have to be broken down. And there are a lot of different strategies in place already that you can't put into one report.
Well, I don't look at it as a report as much as I do as a way to guide us.
That's right.
I mean, that's what it's supposed to do. And we need to have, I'm not saying we need to have every minute detail by any means, but we need to have the big picture here. And so that we are guided, so we make sure that we get those minute points.
But we don't want to change it midstream halfway through the year, since they're already working on this.
Well,
And we're not suggesting changing it either. What we're asking tonight to do is simply to show you where we're having some difficulties, show you where we think we may be looking at multi-year rather than this year, and then to ask your input or reaction to that, which is what we're getting.
You know, I think that when we spoke about this earlier, we were kind of creating this and color coding it. The thinking was that the blue and the yellow was the board report. That was what the board needed to see. And then we started putting these action steps, which were our work as a cabinet to say, who's going to take a lead on this? Who's going to be responsible for this? And so it gets a little bit detailed and a little bit time and labor intensive just to keep up with it. And so maybe we don't put as many yellows in as we should. Maybe because we know we put in yellows and we've got all those action steps that we need to report on. And so maybe we're just reporting too much. Maybe we should just be giving the blue and the yellow to the board with this is a strategy and this is where we are on our goal. I don't know.
Well, the long and short of it is, you're interested in goal attainment. And we have been told at different points, different years, as we've developed our strategy, don't get us into the weeds.
Absolutely.
We want to see what the end goal is. And if you're not there, tell us why not. Or if you are there and you need to set a new goal, share with us how you got there. But we've also been asked at different points over the course of the last several years, be able to pull up data right now to show us what the predictability is. How are you predicting? If you aren't able to predict, then you're not able to manage. And if you're not managing, what are you doing with the data? So we've tried to create a data-rich plan so that we can share not just with the board, but with the teachers and principals where they are too, which gets back into assessment. We are happy on assessment. There's no doubt about that.
Well,
On this, though, on this particular piece, what we're wanting to demonstrate to you is that I think by 2020, we're going to be showing 90% proficiency in technology use. But we have several steps that have to come into play before we can do that for this year. I'm confident that this year we aren't going to be able to do that. But we should be able to. For example, the 21st century technology skills, we've had that committee. That committee has met. They've generated some output, and we're using that. We're factoring that into our work as well.
And I feel like this, in order for us, this plan to work and for us to get where we want to get by 2020, this is an evolution. This won't, this time next year, it'll be different things that we're looking at. And so it's a living document. And I think we need to remind ourselves of that somewhat.
I don't think you can eliminate, thinking about what Kathy said, I don't think you can eliminate the action steps because that tells us what you're doing. That tells us, to me, the action steps is part of your strategy of what you're doing to get to the goal. So, 'cause, it leads to further questions. I mean, maybe that you don't want us to have further questions. But it makes it difficult for me as a board member to sit and, I hate to use the term evaluate, but help be a member of a committee that sits and guides the direction of the system for the next year, when sometimes I don't understand where we're at in some of these processes. I guess that's the best way to say that. So.
well, and as I thought about this, and as I would look at it, and then I'd put it down, and then I'd look at it again, and then I would write some things, and then, so as I did that, I thought about what I wanted this document for as a board member, and I thought about what I wanted this document to be for our teachers and for our administration. And I think the important thing is that there needs to be ownership in all of those areas. And I'm not sure that there is that ownership, because if this is our living, working document, then we need ownership at all levels. And whatever it takes to get that ownership, I think we need to be working toward that.
How would they demonstrate that to us?
With testing.
Pardon me?
How would they demonstrate ownership at all levels to us?
I'm not saying that it needs to be in the plan.
Oh, I know, but like you said, that's what we're, because you said we need more detail and we want to drill down.
I didn't say we needed more detail.
You were
I don't
saying
know that
more
I s-
action steps, don't eliminate action steps. And so,
I think in order to reach these goals, that we have to have ownership from
Agreed.
our teachers, from our administrators, from our board members,
Our
for
parents.
our parents,
I don't disagree
And
with
our
that.
students.
and our
I don't disagree
students.
with any of that. What I'm saying is, how do we
However,
demonstrate that to us?
I don't need it demonstrated. I want it in the action steps. However the administration chooses to go about making that happen, it's fine with me.
Okay.
I just,
That's what I was asking. How will they come back and report to us? Yep, it's owned at every level.
I think you raise a really important question, because that's the conundrum that we always have when we're
That's why I asked it.
dealing with these kinds of things. And I guess the analogy I would use is, I think of it as a roadmap. I think of it as, okay, we're going to go from point A to point B, and in between, we're going to stop off and see X, Y, and Z. How do we know we're doing that? And so that's what this plan is to me. It's how we get, it's describing how we're going to make progress, and it's also giving us the opportunity to re-examine and make sure, are we on course?
Right.
Are we making the daily growth that we need to make in order to get where we want to get on time? And so I think we just need to think of it in a, I don't think we should, I think we sometimes get tied up in the details of the words and the numbers instead of the concept of what its
big picture.
overall use is.
Well, and that's why I asked, because I'm not disagreeing with any of you. The idea is, yes, we would like to know how we're doing on this, and the only way to know that necessarily isn't the testing numbers. There's other ways to know that. We'd like to know what the action steps are, but there's probably 25 action steps, because under number 1, just for example, implement curriculum maps. Well, there's probably A through Z at least under that they could give to us. And so
And
we could
the
get
ownership.
really detailed, and then like the ownership thing, I agree. We all need to own this. I'm just not sure how we, in a succinct way, how do you demonstrate that?
well, and I'm not sure how we demonstrate it other
Okay.
than, when I hear talk about conversations and
Okay.
that kind of thing, I think that's the way you build.
So you want some anecdotal, maybe, examples of how that's happening? Is that
Keep in
sufficient?
mind that your building level school improvement plans are tied very specifically
Well,
to
those
this.
should demonstrate that.
On a building level, the teachers might not, I would doubt that any teacher would say they're working on board level or board goal number or whatever. But they might be saying that they're working on their improvement plan,
Which
this
is
number or whatever.
very tightly tied to.
For instance, a 90% goal to achieve those math standards, let's say. You should have visual evidence of that when you walk in any classroom in this district, of teachers having classroom goals posted in their classrooms, of having tracking student data toward that goal. I mean, I can walk into a number of classrooms and know right away that this class in third period is at 68% on that standard.
And the
That's-
students have their data binders or
That's
data
ownership.
folders.
That's
or-
ownership by the teachers and the students. That's the evidence I look for.
So with that anecdote tied to that in a report, is that the kind of thing you're thinking of?
Maybe. I think it goes back to, and I think we're going to be looking at our mission statement, because we didn't include people.
No.
And so, you know, that's what when we leave out people that, for something that is to guide our school district, then that's what I want to ensure that we include, and that we are in an inclusive environment. And so I guess that's my main concern is, you know, I don't expect for anybody to recite the board goals, but I do expect them to be aware of the board goals. Obviously, they're working toward them, so somehow, you know, they need to be aware and know what they're working toward. And so, I mean, I don't think it's, I think having conversations, I know that you take things like this to discussion. I mean, that's another way to be inclusive, you know, so.
If we could jump to page 5.
Yes, we can.
On page 5.
I have no notes on page 5.
Okay, page 6.
On page 5, same type of issue. We're still defining what technology means at the staff level, and we will be doing that as we talk more about what they're learning from the use of the iPads, how that's going to convert into use in the classroom. We are still defining that. We're making some strides on that one, but I don't know that we're going to have that one answered either. This seems to be a 2020 goal. I think we'll be there before 2020, but 100% of employees use available technology. If you think about that, as we did the other day, we probably do have right at 100% of our faculty using technology at their hands for attendance, for posting grades, for sharing communication.
Mm-hmm.
I think where we're just now developing is how they actually change their instructional design using technology, how that's going to change the way they go about teaching. That's the next level, and that's not going to be realized this year.
Now, we have seen
On our
some of
way.
that with the introduction of smart boards and so forth, and online content, you know, with the Pearson products and so forth. So they have adjusted their classroom activities, but not 100%.
It's huge. 5 years ago, we wouldn't have had the smart boards used.
No, we didn't.
By
We didn't have them, so.
almost all
Yeah,
of
there's
our
a great
elementary.
many classrooms that are
They wouldn't know what to do
utilizing-
without it now.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do they use them at the high school as much as they do at the elementary?
We have them.
We have ceiling mounted projectors at the 7th and 8th and high school levels, and they use them about every day. Mrs. McDermott, Mr. Irwin, I know. I'll tell you, when they go down, it's like the electricity is off. And we have to respond really quickly. And that's good. We like that kind of problem, so.
Okay, I wasn't supposed to say anything.
Oh.
Page, are we ready for
Let's-
page 6?
We're ready for, well, if you
Or
want.
Right,
7.
Page 12.
7 is where I really have questions. That's where we talk about the pathways. That one is, the metrics are very difficult on this one. We've had our conversations, we've learned from our conversations, but I don't know that we have metrics. What is it about the individual pathways that we want students to know? And maybe some of it has to do with what you mentioned just a few minutes ago, Dixie. Our standards have been in a state of flux all year long. We still aren't too sure what we are going to be asking students to know per pathway or whatever. Is this a 2020 goal, or is this a 2014 goal? That's the big question. And we've had our conversations. The students have taught us a few things about our practice, and we've shared that with principals. To what extent they've shared that with teachers is a good question at this point. But what do the students need to know about the pathways? We're still exploring that. And the other thing that I have to share with you is that as we've looked at the 3 pathways, and I can't remember the sequence, but you have discovery, you have, what are the 3? You have discovery, investigation, or is that the same?
No, it's,
Well, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but the fact is, they overlap. Almost on every pathway, we really ask the kids to be doing all of those, rather than just,
Well, isn't that okay?
I think it's reality.
So do we have the pathways established?
The pathways pretty much reflect the organization of the schools. The pre-K 4, the 5-8, the 9-12. And what we're looking for would be, as they come out of those grade spans, what is it that they know? What is it that they know or are expecting about the next one? We're slowly getting some definitions there. But when you look at what they're expected to know academically, wouldn't that be assessed by their grades?
well,
We don't-
and the standards. Because the standards go by grade level.
Right.
And we don't have those yet, so you can't really fill in the blanks. But it's more than just standards. It's what they should be, what they should know by the end of grade 4, what they should be able to do, which that may include technology. It may include some career readiness.
And I guess that I'm suggesting that teachers are designing their classes. They're trying to align themselves with the standards. In fact, we've had extensive work on that. So shouldn't the teachers' end of the year grade, the fact that they are promoting the students to the next grade, indicate that the teacher feels they have achieved those standards as they're established? I mean, I would think that would, what more is there about a pathway?
Well, I guess to me, I thought it was broader than that.
And that's what we're asking, and how do you measure
Because
that?
it could be behaviors, it could be a number of things, but I think the kids need to know by the end of fourth grade, I'll be able to do this. Kind of generically. I'm not talking about detailed.
And even another step above that, I think part of the
And
discussion.
parents need to know.
You know, because when we were talking to, I was with Pat, was it the 5th grade? Yeah. When we were talking to 5th grade students, we were asking first year 5th grade student, we were asking them when they left the 4th grade environment, were they familiar enough with what opportunities presented them as they moved through the middle school setting? Which means they have to, we're asking them and we're asking our staff to educate our children further to help guide them into possible interest or possible areas of
Career
career advancement.
college readiness.
I mean, so I don't want to get hung up that it's a lot more than just when you graduate 4th grade, you know that you have your standards, because we're also wanting to be more forward-thinking.
Well, it's everything from what are the possibilities, because one of the things we're very proud of is that kids get to take performance music, instrumental kinds of things as early as 5th grade. So do they know that is available? Do they know that is it 6th grade, they need to sign up as 21st century scholars, that's available to them? Do they know, I think it's all of those things. And then when they go from intermediate to high school, it's all of the career ed. But doesn't have to be the only way you go, that you can be college preparatory and take your AP classes, but if you're interested in engineering, you can also get the drafting. I think it's all of that kind of thing, and it's almost as much marketing as it is.
Well, it's actually marketing. I see it more of counseling.
Yes.
So,
It was discovery, explore, focus. It just,
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
it just came to my.
And we're
Well-
finding at every
No
grade
doubt.
level in every classroom, that just happens
Yeah.
almost simultaneously.
Because in some of our conversations, especially at the high school, if I remember that conversation correctly, many of the students felt as though by the time they got to ninth grade, they had already missed out on some opportunities that they were not aware of or made aware of. And so, I think it is a lot more than, oh, you've passed this grade, so evidently you have everything that is needed. There is some, as Pat would say, we need to be very intentional. I mean, there are some things that we need to be very intentional about. Susie?
This conversation is reminding me of of a book that I used was one of my favorite tools as a teacher and in my life as an educator. And it's called Yardsticks. And it was by age, and it basically had the expectations that for each child, for the typical child at a given age point along their development. And it was a very useful book and I used to use it as a tool with kids, sitting down and looking, oh, well, you're 9 years, 6 months, let's look and see. Well, yeah, you can do that, but maybe you need to work on that one, but we need to sort of come up with our own yardstick, so to speak, for Richmond that includes all of the opportunities that kids have, that sort of individualizes that experience. And so when I think of our pathways, I want it to be generic enough so that it includes those big picture developmental stages, but I also want it to include the opportunities that exist along the way for kids so that they know that they're not missing something out. I could almost see a visual of it that, you give everybody their yardstick for the year, kind of, and they'd have a whole collection of them by the time or maybe they get them all for pre-K through fourth grade at once or something. I don't know. I'm dreaming here, but.
well, but that's exactly what we want. I mean, that's not a dream. We should want that. We should know that kids going into the high school, if they're going to be interested in going the biomed track or not. We should know that well before they hit the ninth grade.
And they should know that that's an option so that when they're in sixth grade and they're like fascinated with physiology, they can build on that.
Well, I
Because
think
it's about building on your strengths.
And I think it's important for parents to have that because they are the child's first guidance counselor. And they need those things to sort of help guide their child through the school experience.
And we've learned that many of the students don't see the advancement into the next setting as a positive, but as it should be. It's actually kind of been more of a negative.
Well, it's almost as a threat.
Right.
You'd better get this now because they're not going to put up with this.
Because in the next level, you're not going to have this fun or
We heard a lot,
I heard a
when we
lot of
had
that.
those conversations, we
Yeah.
heard that a lot.
We've shared that
But
with
I
the
don't want to
principals.
the part about the parents being educated and involved and knowing what's available is equally as important because they're the ones that's going to ensure that their child, they're going to ask the questions, they're going to get them involved.
So do our students make any kind of a plan? Like, I was reading somewhere about a 6-year plan.
They start at the sixth
They
grade.
do start at sixth grade.
And so they do make,
They do. They
All of
do.
our intermediate schools are making use of the online program provided by the Department of Education, which is sort of a career exploration, and they're all doing that.
I think the mistake made at the General Assembly in saying that Common Core is not to happen is that the Common Core had embedded in every discipline the college and career readiness goals and objectives. I mean, that was a thread through everything. And I'm not saying we can't reestablish that, but it was there. And not just a standalone, here for the next 15 minutes, we're going to talk about career and college readiness. This was just part of it. So we are trying to reinvent some of that right now.
So tell me about this plan. Does the plan then go with them each year? Is it revisited? Is it a meaningful plan? Does someone help them create this plan?
Well, over at Test, the counselor at Test helps them create the plan, and the plan does travel with them. Now, the extent to which it's used once they're in high school, I think, is dependent on the student and the counselor.
So could that be a strategy?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
While we're still on page 7, I was trying to get in a moment ago. Jeff, you had brought up a point, and I think it's just as important. And that is that comment that is out to the side, and the very last strategy there on page 7 to ensure the stakeholders have an avenue for sharing. But the comment out there really concerns me because it's something that I think that we've talked about a lot, and that is ensuring that the 100% of parents participate in the survey tool. And I know that that's kind of difficult to measure. Still, I think that's just a very key component of this section because their feedback is as important as anything. It also shows their connectivity to not only their child's day-to-day classroom efforts, but also the feedback that we get that will correlate to this entire document right here. And that's an important piece of that puzzle I think that we really need to stay on top of, and that is, for me, it's very key. Don't want, lack of a better expression, any parent left behind.
Well, are parents involved in the plan?
I couldn't tell you that.
I mean, that may be a missing link.
I'm not sure if the parents sign off on that. I couldn't tell you.
Because I know that some of our conversations centered around how we include the parents in these important career setting, things. So, and many times it seems as though the parents don't always have the information to help steer their child in the right direction. So, just food for thought. Okay, what page are we ready for?
Well, before we go to another page, can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
We've been through 7 pages. Of course, we skipped a couple. But are you taking the feedback and the comments? I guess, where are we going from here?
Why, Jeff?
I'm not supposed to ask that question?
We'll find out in 2020.
My term is up at the end of this year, so.
Have a television?
We'll write you.
We are, and the answer to your question is yes, we're
Thank you.
listening, we'll process. We want you to know our concerns, we're also listening to yours. Where we go tonight may be very different from where we're going after we've had a chance to process that.
Okay, so the ball's back in your court.
And yours. Sure. I mean, we're hoping it goes both ways, because some of these, like we said before, we don't believe we're going to be able to address some of these in the way of a completion at the end of this year. We've heard you say, maybe we do need to think about extending this beyond this year, or maybe we do need to think about making this just part of the trajectory that goes to 2020. That's what we needed to hear.
Well, because I've kind of always thought about that. I'd never really looked at any of this as just a 2014 goal.
Okay.
I really haven't. But one of the main reasons why I asked that question, because I'm almost thinking that as we do this, we should also do it with the understanding that we've got 2014, 2015 for our next year. So, we can be done with it in 2 or 3 months and maybe be a little bit more aggressive and a little quicker talking about in September, how are we, maybe have the discussions, are we reaching our benchmarks, and instead of being so, I'd like to get a little bit more ahead of it instead of, I kind of feel like I'm behind it, so.
Well, we do too. And what we're trying to do is determine what reasonable benchmarks are. And I think that working through this document this year has raised some questions that may help us next year.
Well, I think not having right now the standards, whatever they're going to be, just kind of puts everything in flux. You kind of know where you're supposed to be, but you don't know exactly where you're supposed to be per grade level because you haven't seen them yet.
Well,
You're kind of going on.
That's the way this year has been.
Well,
I mean, with
that's,
our
I know.
ISTEP scores from last year.
Exactly. And so there's a lot of things on here that until something's definite and in print.
So back to Jeff's question. So could you, at some point, if we could finish up this year and know what we are measuring, because some of these are not going to be measured this year, obviously.
I think we can talk
fair-
about progress, but I don't know that we'll talk about goal completion.
Okay. And so then, at the same time, because we really need to be working forward for next year. And at the same time, could we take into consideration the conversation that we've had here and determine how we wish to move forward? Here's what I'm thinking. We have talked about a new, revisiting our mission statement, correct? And so, don't you do your goals to reflect your mission statement?
That should be it. I mean, or to achieve your vision.
Okay.
Your vision statement. Your
Okay.
mission pretty much tells you how you're moving towards your vision.
Okay.
But that gets to number 8.
Okay.
When we were talking about actively engaged in children's education, shouldn't the definition of engagement be a function of your mission statement? Could it be a function of your mission statement? As we talk about what it is that we're trying to accomplish, we haven't had that community-wide statement or conversation with our parents and with our teachers. What we were trying to do was to put a plan together very efficiently, and we did. The mission statement was redone so that it would be measurable. Now, maybe just the process of getting active participation from our stakeholders would be a way to raise their level of engagement at some point. I'm not sure that that's it, but that was the question I had on focus area number 4. We may have a great opportunity in working on a new mission statement.
Okay.
If you'd like to talk about the other comments that we have, most of that, I think we've touched on most of these. Completion of the study, on page 10, completion of the study will not be possible until the summative student achievement data and the end-of-year teacher attendance data are, that's almost just an obvious statement, but we wanted you to be aware of it. Conduct a building audit of visible displays of student academic success. That's not what we're talking about. Joy of learning. Joy of learning. 100% of students are in learning environments that stimulate and produce the joy of learning process. As long as you understand that we're still determining what some of these indicators are, as long as you understand that, I think we'll be fine on that one as well. But actually measuring it, you know, at one point, the comment was made, you need to conduct a survey and determine, are the students joyful? Are they experiencing joy? And I don't know that asking in a survey is really what you want.
Well, and I don't see any reason to try and assess that. I mean, like an assessment. I think that's something that just is, if kids are engaged, that means they are learning, they're achieving in a classroom. It's more engagement in what you're doing.
We talked about that a little bit.
And-
That's the
yeah,
measure of
we-
joy,
yeah,
basically, is engagement.
Is basically what it is. And, you know, it's kind of like Albert Einstein said one time, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. So, you know, it's,
But when you put a
That's what
number
we're
on
trying,
it,
that's what we're discovering as we're trying to put numbers on everything.
What a
so-
sage.
because,
He was a smart guy.
Very.
because we know what our goal is for all kids to learn, but it's sort of your mission is that not only they learn, but that they're actively engaged and enjoying the process. And that's
Right.
more of a mission than a measurable goal.
well, and the way I see it, if you have a classroom and you see achievement in that classroom, those kids have to be engaged or that wouldn't be happening. And the administrators, the principals in the building know that better than anybody. Because they're walking the halls, they see what's going on in those classrooms, the walkthroughs tell you that.
Do you have other comments that
Oh.
you weren't able to include?
Well, let me check here.
I don't have anything else on our list.
I just think that if you could just let us know where you see this needing to go. And maybe I think we had good intentions with this document. I just think that it's a bit cumbersome right now. It just seems a bit cumbersome to me, anyway.
It's pretty heavy.
And any streamlining that we can do so that it is not as cumbersome, I think, and still with our students in mind, because that's what it's all about, is our students. And I just think that we
Well,
need
we
to.
will process what we think we've heard tonight. And
Because we
communicate back to
kind of
you.
also said we want more detail.
Yeah, it was just.
To just piggyback, Linda, on what you're saying, I think one of the challenges that we all face is coming up with the effective and efficient way of measuring our progress. So, but doing it in a way that it doesn't become an obstacle. We don't want this process to become an obstacle.
Right.
And we want it to be something that is reflective of the creativity and hard work of our staff and our students, and finding a way to distill that in that way is I think one of the biggest challenges that we face. And I would hate for someone to feel like they're doing something extra just
For us.
for us.
Right.
What I want is to be able to utilize the good work that they're doing and find an efficient way of extracting that information so that we all know where we're going and that we're going at the speed we need to.
Well, and for this year, when you do your State of the Schools report, that's
Right.
pretty much a summation of where we got to this year on the strategic plan.
We are in process right now of doing some assessments.
And we'll be reporting on the CPAS, the next CPAS conversation anyway, which will bring us right back to this document. So this will be an ongoing conversation.
Great. Good conversation. Thanks, everyone, for participating. We are ready to move on to our press conference. Anyone from the press? No. They have all of their questions answered and more. Public commentary? Anyone wishing to speak from the public? No? Follow-up old business? Do you have anything, Dr. Borff?
Well, some of our policy work tonight was follow-up on old business.
Yes, it was.
Could I just go out on a limb and say that I hope that we've experienced the last snow of the season today? Oh, let's hope
next
so.
week
And
we're
I
supposed to get-
saw my first daffodil yesterday. Wasn't in Richmond, but it was, but I think that it was maybe gonna get here. There'll be one here soon. And I am hoping that we can have the energy to finish out the year in style, because I feel like we're in a good place.
Don't forget spring break.
Well, I think we have to commend Test for their good work that they did on the iStep.
That was wonderful, yeah.
There was a press
Now, Ms.
style
McDermott,
video also.
You do know that there was a tweak at the nose of Dennis in that.
Wasn't very well received. I don't think you'll find compliments among the staff at Dennis for that.
I bet not.
Well, the proof will be in the pudding.
Yeah.
That's right.
We'll wait for the results.
Well, we already know the results from the last several years, and it's been passed around the building. You might end up in test, you never know.
Suzanne.
The Crestdale staff did a video too. I don't know if you saw it, but it was, what does the test say? It was very cute also.
Gosh.
The teachers put all humility aside. They were very, very good sports about that one. I also wanted to remind you that we have a new set of facts about Richmond schools, so please be sure to share with all of the folks in your circle of influence.
Thanks
Thank you.
for doing that.
And
Helpful.
I know we're not doing celebrations tonight, but I
Of
think
course we
somebody
are.
has to talk about the Red Devils.
I wore my shirt specifically so we could talk about the Red Devils. So all kinds of Red Devils too, but the one we're working on Saturday would be the boys basketball. So
Well, and I have to talk about something that I saw on television Friday evening as Mike and I were having a very exciting evening at home, waiting on the Pacers to come on. And maybe I'm just behind in this, but have you all seen the Hoosier legend?
Yes.
And our own Vegas Ferguson is featured. It was an absolute delight to watch Ava Stewart
Yes, it was.
and Michael Presti,
Yes, it was.
and of course Vegas did just a super job. And on Channel 53 and Fox, and it was quite delightful. So if you haven't, I don't know how many times it's going to rerun, but if you haven't seen it, try to see it.
is this a live meeting or
Being
will it run
recorded.
before Saturday?
I'm not sure about that.
Well, good luck anyway. I was gonna say where tickets are available and when, but we'll hope everyone just gets to the athletic department and buys their tickets. So.
Yeah, go Devils. Anybody else?
It was a big class of inductees last night for the National Honor Society.
80. Was it 80?
Yeah, nice group, and Dr. Frank from IU East was our keynote speaker. superb presentation to the students. It was just a good evening.
Well, congratulations to all of those students. Anything else? If not, we are adjourned.
Can I